Welcome to Beyond Headlines with Nguille. It was in early 2000s I had gone home for the holidays from college. A mob of angry youths dragged two non-Naga persons out of the jail. This was not the 2015 Dimapur incident I'm talking about. I'm talking about an incident that happened in Wokha during those times. Now, the two persons, non-locals, were lynched on the roadside after the mob had inflicted on them a brutal beating. Now, from what I heard, the two persons were from the local business community who had involved the Naga underground groups in a dispute of sorts. Now, talks in the community may have also hinted at questions of threats to members of the public. Now, this angered the locals there in Wokha. Another angle to this incident was that was hinted was extortion, which some of our people call tax. So it was extortion on behalf of the local underground factions there in that area, I was told. It has been shown time and again, including recent open display of challenge and anger by the Dimapur youth, our youth organization, and even the Angami youths in Kohima recently. It shows that the Naga people don't like giving tax for services we don't receive. No. Now, anyway, what happened in Wokha during the time when the two non-Naga persons were lynched is an expression of a complex array of both socio-cultural angst, sociocultural anger, and real-world administrative failures. That said, this was not the first time non-Naga persons had been caught on the wrong side of business, either by guilt or by circumstances. Most of you will remember the dark day of March 5th, 2015 in Dimapur. By the way, it's the 11th anniversary today, by the way. 5th March. On that warm summer day, a mob of thousands of people dragged out a person from the Dimapur Central Jail and lynched that person. I think it was right at the clock tower in Dimapur. It's probably the most brutal action taken by members of the public in Nagaland in response to an alleged wrong. Again, in the early 2000s, I think a shopkeeper from Bihar in Kohima also found himself on the wrong side of the crowd. He was assaulted by locals for being too oversmart. A few days ago, a video showing thousands of Muslims thronging the streets of Dimapur on Eid went viral. It provoked a stream of both anger and sarcasm. Anger that the government of Nagaland and the district authorities are still looking for their socks. And sarcasm that everyone will be keyboard tigers on social media and will eventually forget all about this until the next big gathering of non-Naga persons. Now, in the first instance, where the two non-Naga persons were lynched, the context was not so much about the involvement of the underground factions or anything else, which, as you already know, is again a grievance most people in Nagaland may have already, of course. But it was during a time when questions of a takeover of the Naga businesses, even land, and the dilution of the Naga cultural ethos was at its height in the tribe's discourse during that time. In the second instance, the March 5th, 2015 lynching in Dimapur, it was not seen just as something that was to be dealt by the law and order authorities through an administrative means. It was in fact seen as a cathartic expression of pent-up, long endured and festering frustration at the growing influence of how non-Naga cultures were allegedly slowly taking over the land. In fact, it was said during the time that outsiders have begun gaining too much influence in Nagaland that they have begun to disrespect the locals in Nagaland. Now, broadly, there are people who believe that all these incidents where the public took the law in their own hands were merely reasons and excuse, a spark, if you will, to set off something that had been in the sun for much too long, for a long time. By definition, they were merely opportunities for the people to release their bottled up frustration. It is true that crimes that involve a non-Naga person often find context in one community, mostly and generally the Muslim community, especially in the region. But the reality is that everyone has had it dirty by choice or by circumstances, including our own people who live outside. Now, just that the difference is just that a wrongdoing by a non-Naga person, Muslim, a Hindu, or anyone from other socio-religious community or groups always seem to bring out the flaws of Nagaland's immigration system or the lack of it. And it brings out the role or the lack of it of the government of Nagaland, and it brings out the failure of our own community. A September 2024 editorial by Nagaland Post sums it up with this truth. This is what the editor said in Nagaland Post. The issue surrounding ever-growing number of immigrants in Nagaland, whether legal or illegal, goes beyond mere xenophobia. Whatever the case, the topic of illegal immigrants and immigration in Nagaland is a topic which cannot be washed away by press releases. The topic is highly sensitive for both the Nagaland government and the local Naga communities due to a very long list of historical, political and socio-cultural factors. In 2024, the Naga Students Federation had demanded that the Nagaland government bring the districts of Dimapur, Chumugidima and Newland under the ambit of the inner line permit. The students had demanded immediate establishment of all necessary mechanisms to ensure strict enforcement of the inner line permit. The NSF also demanded the creation of ILP monitoring cells at key transit locations, including Dimapur, the Dimapur railway station, Dimapur airport, and all other entry and exit points to Nagaland. Now, the organization claimed that these measures would prevent illegal entry of outsiders into Nagaland. I'm told that just a couple of days ago, leaders of the Dimapur Naga Students Union met with the governor of Nagaland. They represented a concern. This was the concern: enforce ILP in Nagaland right down to the letter. In September 2024, the government announced that the ILP would be implemented in Dimapur, Chumugidima and Newland. I think you may have read about this. I believe it was the pressure that the students were bearing down on the government that the letter bring first. The pressure may have been seen in the statement that the administration issued following the decision to implement the ILP in the said district. According to the Minister for Tourism and Higher Education, Mr. Temjen Imna Along, the residents would be classified into three categories. Category 1 and Category 2 residents were exempt from the ILP. According to the government, Category 1 would be individuals who had settled in Dimapur before December 1st, 1963. These individuals would not require an ILP and would be eligible for a smart card, as well as the option to obtain a permanent residence card and a domicile certificate. Now, Category 2 individuals are those who settled between December 1st and 1963 and November 21st, 1979. Individuals in this category would also not need an ILP and would be issued a PRC with the option of obtaining a domicile certificate. Now, Category 3 includes those who settled in Dimapur on or after November 22nd, 1979. This group will be required to obtain an ILP for their stay in the district. But there's a big confusion here. If both Category 1 and Category 2 individuals do not require ILP, but may obtain a permanent residence certificate and a domicile certificate, why were they put in two different categories? Why not build the entire frame of the third category only? This is just one of the many flaws and the confusion even within the administration of Nagaland about how it should be dealing with the illegal immigration system and the mechanism that supposedly can counter it, or maybe our hearts are just not in it. Now let's examine the ILP regulation before we talk about why it's actually the system, this very system that's supposed to check illegally entry into Nagaland, that's actually fueling the influx. Now, the Bengal Eastern Frontier Regulation of 1873 has been enforced in Nagaland since 1873. The BEFR apparently is to protect and safeguard the identity and existence of the indigenous people of Nagaland. The regulation makes it obligatory for anyone, both Indian citizens and foreign nationals, who is not an indigenous inhabitant of Nagaland, to obtain an inner line permit to enter the state of Nagaland. The ILP, on paper at least, is for a limited period. The Nagaland government has set various requirements, validity periods, and fees for different categories of ILP applicants. Now, these groups include business people, traders and individuals who have an interest to start one, people on trip to Nagaland for recreation such as tourists, and people, menial and skilled workers looking for livelihood in Nagaland. The first group, the business interests, and the third group, people looking for jobs, probably form the largest population of non-Naga persons entering the state. Professional and skilled workers such as school and college lecturers, teachers hailing from outside the state also need ILP. Now, the issue is not so much about their economic demographic as much as for the perceived increase in the number of Nagaland, for the number of non-Nagas coming into Nagaland. It's all about disappearing into the population, and what we do after that. It's for both the lack of administrative clarity, the weak and the half-hearted implementation of regulatory mechanisms in our state, and the weak local community safeguards, the lethargic tribal populations who depend on cheap labor that immigrants offer to us. The fact that Nagaland is a data nightmare makes it even worse. If our statistics department is still functioning, I think we would love to hear from them. We haven't heard of that group for a long time. Anyhow, poor data and research oversight means we have no clarity to planning. We have no guideline to strategize because we have no data, meaning we must have to fall back on criticize and demonize census 2011. This means our vast numbers are merely half-truths and full conjectures. This opens opportunities for confusion for us. In 2020, the then Indian Minister of State for Home Affairs, Mr. G. Kishan Reddy, claimed that Bangladesh would be half empty if India allowed everyone who entered the country legally to claim citizenship. He said half of Bangladesh would be empty if India starts granting them citizenship. Now, the BBC did a fact-check report on this with a footnote that there are major disagreements over the exact numbers of Bangladeshis who may have entered India illegally. In 2004 the then Indian Minister of State for Home Affairs, Sri Prakash Jaiswal, told the Parliament that there were 12 million illegal Bangladesh nationals in India. But he later retracted his comments. After West Bengal and Assam, the two states that are believed to be the favorite landing spots for illegal immigrants, complained. Now again in 2016, Kiran Rijiju, the then Minister for State for Home Affairs, told the Parliament, according to available information, he said, there are about 20 million illegal immigrants from Bangladesh in India. That's the problem when you don't give importance to data. With no real data available for the numbers, politicians in India can still insist that illegal immigrants from Bangladesh are taking away their jobs. We still don't know. But it's not just international immigration, but migration within among the states. How many undocumented individuals from other Indian states are in Nagaland? This is a dilemma Nagaland shares in. We just don't have the data for us to be able to look across the board and find where the roads on the map are. Way back into 2007 and 2008, I reported on this. Some say there were about 1 to 2 lakh illegal immigrants in Dimapur alone, especially those from Bangladesh. Some put it upwards to even 3 to 4 lakhs across Nagaland. There are no numbers. I know this because this has been my area of reporting since 2005. There has never been an exact number or even a broad account of how many. Now, The Nagaland government may consider a serious census in this regard, an economic survey, if you may call it that. Otherwise, the ILP will be nothing more than a piece of screen for the bathroom instead of a door, ladies and gentlemen. Here are the primary reasons why Nagaland, especially the government and the local populations, should be seriously worried. The first reason is the obvious one: demographic and cultural concerns. Most right-thinking people have this on their plate. The indigenous Naga population fears that large-scale illegal immigration, particularly from Bangladesh and neighboring states, threatens their unique tribal identity, their customs, their community rights, and land rights. Of course, their fear is legitimate. Look at Tripura, where the indigenous population now is the one demanding right. They have to demand that the government stay away from their lands and forests. They have to demand that their language, for instance, the Kakburok, be the medium of instruction in schools. The Nagas have a distinct ethnic and cultural heritage, and the influx of outsiders is seen as a dilution of their traditions, and it could be happening. Second, land and resource competition. Nagaland follows a strong tribal land ownership system where land is communally owned by tribes and villages. Illegal immigrants, particularly from Bangladesh and other northeastern states, they are perceived as encroaching on tribal lands and competing for limited economic opportunities, leading to resentment among locals. Third, political and electoral impact. There are concerns that illegal immigrants are being politically manipulated for electoral gains by our leaders. Allegations have been made that illegal settlers have managed to obtain documents such as Aadhaar cards and voter IDs, potentially influencing elections in favor of political parties that actually support them. This creates tensions between the state government, political factions, and the Naga civil society groups. Fourth, security and law and order issues. Illegal immigration is often linked to concerns over crime, drug trafficking, socioeconomic unrest. Remember the previous year when the persons accused in the Thing Rat case in Assam, they were found in Nagaland. How many legally or illegally residing non-Naga individuals in Nagaland have history? We don't know. Whose fault is it? The porous international border with Myanmar also raises fears of cross-border movements that could impact security, particularly given the ongoing insurgency issues in Nagaland. Fifth, the role of our civil society and student youth organizations need to be a bit more on the ground instead of using the media to thump their chests. Press releases wouldn't remove or prosecute illegal immigrants. Naga organizations such as the NSF and other tribal bodies have been vocal about the need to curb illegal immigration. Yes, but lip service is not enough. Sixth point, the presence of illegal immigrants is perceived as an external demographic threat, which adds another layer to the complex Naga identity struggle. But then again, there are a lot of elements, including communities that offer protection to illegal immigrants as well. It's our own fault. They offer us cheap labor, and we provide them with patronage. To be fair, these are also the same reasons that the Nagaland government sometimes might have to treat carefully. It faces challenges in implementing strict measures without triggering unrest or violating human rights in this regard. Although the ILP is a legal mechanism meant to regulate the entry of non-indigenous people into Nagaland and other protected states, there are several reasons why non-Naga individuals and immigrants continue to enter and even settle in the state despite the ILP regulations in place. These are the main reasons. First one, this is the easiest and the most obvious one: weak enforcement mechanism by our government. While the ILP system exists on paper, enforcement on the ground, particularly at the entry points such as Dimapur railway station, our airport, and highways, our roads, can often be lax or inconsistent. We have all seen or at least heard about the 20 rupees entry in case you have no ILP. Some of us, we have seen it. There have been repeated demands like those from the NSF to set up proper ILP monitoring cells, but in many cases these have either not been implemented or are inadequately staffed or under-resourced. And then second, we have a porous Dimapur border. Anyone from Assam with 2 legs can come in and go as they wish. Look at the Dimapur train station. Go in the morning and evening. You will see why they come in hundreds in the morning and go back in hundreds in the evening. It's so easy for them. Now, once they get past the station, how will you find them? The enforcement stops at the ILP issuance table. They'll open shops, establish it, and then they will sell it to the next new person who comes in. We have seen it. And if you go down the street just next to HornbillTV, you will see a lot of new faces, people who cannot even speak one straight Nagami sentence. And you know that they are very new. And it keeps on happening. So who checks their history and their background? In a fast-growing town like Dimapur, land leasing and renting by outsiders continues without proper ILP checks, often with the complicity of local landlords, and once they enter, they are traceable. Almost everyone knows about this, but I believe that our administration is still looking for its shoe somewhere. Nagaland shares borders with Assam and Manipur, and it's open without fencing or any surveillance in this regard. Unauthorized movement across these borders is very common. The lack of coordination among district administrations of neighboring states makes the problem even worse. Again, there's no unified enforcement framework from the Nagaland government. A digital interface similar to the Aadhaar or the EPIC systems would be really wonderful here. There is also little digital tracking of ILP issuance, making it easy for people to manipulate it or to bypass the system. This is probably the heart of the immigration problem here. Naga's dependence on migrant labor. Non-Naga individuals enter Nagaland for business or for labor work, often filling in roles in construction, retail, and daily wage. Local dependence on these workers has led to a tolerance of informal entry, legal entry, despite legal provisions in place. Political and bureaucratic apathy also is one reason. Despite repeated resolutions and public concern, successive governments in Nagaland have delayed full-scale ILP enforcement. They have cited administrative complexity or legal ambiguity in this regard. Again, local leaderships and our communities and our political parties are also guilty of electoral politics and vote bank maneuvering. The biggest reason, though, is this: the ILP is actually legitimizing their entry. If there are sufficient concerns about the population of illegal immigrants in Nagaland, why not stop issuing it in the first place or limit it? Why not create categories of talent pools for both skilled and unskilled workers? Why not at least stop issuing new ILP until there is a district or statewide vetting of all the existing ones, clear all of them, deport the illegal ones, if any, and then start new issuances in period frames? Because the people who are entering Nagaland have ILP. Simple. If you are able to easily access ILP without having to go through stringent screening processes, background checks, then why would you sneak in? Because it's so easy to get the document. There is a lack of exit tracking. There is no mechanism to track when someone leaves. Once inside, many simply blend in or disappear into urban settlements, worse in the villages or rural areas. This is where middlemen or agents offer ILPs. The patronage of Naga house owners and Naga businesses are a problem. Who checks them? Nobody. It's not a lack of ILP or failure of implementation. It's the issuance and the guidelines within it which is the problem. It's essentially a legal cover for entry actually. You don't have to sneak in. You just go to the office. Nobody checks your background, so they just give it to you. So it's a legal cover for entry because the permits are easy to obtain. Anyone can apply for an ILP online or at a state entry points, often with minimal verification. It's not hard. That's why many migrants, traders, and job seekers now use ILP as a legal gateway to enter Nagaland and stay indefinitely by renewing or overstaying. Simple. While the ILP is meant to restrict outsiders, its flawed implementation with economic, political, and administrative loopholes in our own tribal community leaderships lacking a strong leadership and insight in this case is actually helping more outsiders enter Nagaland, but with a very legal cover. We cannot do anything about it. So we need to work fast. Now, look at Tripura. Thank you for watching Hornbill TV. I'm Nguille. See you next time.